My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam
on 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me, 5 o'clock. Good morning. It is Wednesday, February 26. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Sunshine this morning. Some clouds this afternoon. Just a beauty of a day on the way. High 53. Tonight and overnight, we'll see some showers, low 43. And then Thursday, rain in the morning, but clouds in the afternoon, and the high is going to be 54. If you are walking out the door with us right now, it is 37 and clear in Dobbs Ferry up in Westchester County, 34 and clear in Lawrenceville over in New Jersey, and it's 41 and clear right outside our Midtown studios.
The top 5 at 5.
It's debate day for the Democrats who want to be the Big Apple's next mayor. 9/11 first responders back in D.C. again fighting for their health benefits. President Trump plays tour guide at the White House. Workers at the Brooklyn Museum are fighting for their jobs. 2 NYPD cops show why they are called New York's finest. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with what was some wild scene Upper Manhattan yesterday. The FDNY says 18 people treated for smoke inhalation after a fire broke out at an Upper Manhattan subway station. This was right before the evening rush yesterday. 191st Street Station. That's where the one train runs. And there were a lot of people down below, and the smoke just started to fill the station. No one was clear where it was coming from.
The train entered the station, made some kind of contact with a piece of equipment on the tracks. That equipment then hit the third rail, creating sparks, and then we had a smoke condition as a result of that as well.
That's the FDNY's Assistant Deputy Chief Michael Woods. Riders got out of the train on their own. Heavy smoke could be seen actually coming out of the station, and service was suspended for a long while between 145th and 215th Streets.
People started to exit the train and the station. We have a total of 9 patients, all smoke-related inhalation injuries. We did not have to use any kind of water of our own. All right, basically it's self-extinguished.
Now, the good news is service is fine now. It was restored, in fact, ahead of the evening commute, but there were some severe delays in a moment or so. Joe Nolan will be up and be able to tell you if there's any delays this morning. What is with all these close calls with airplanes? It seems that there's been so many of these either crashes or close calls, especially since that awful, god-awful crash in Washington, D.C. between a military chopper and an American Airlines aircraft that killed so many. And the latest one, thankfully nobody hurt in this one, a Southwest flight nearly collided with a smaller jet at Chicago's Midway yesterday. The passenger plane aborted its landing just as the business jet entered that runway, apparently without any authorization from air traffic control. Now, Todd Engel was on that plane that was about to land and then could not land.
I always say a prayer before I travel all the time anyway, which is good. And then, of course, said another little prayer after the accelerated, because I knew there was something not right.
Thank God for great pilots. That's what Southwest is saying. The plane did land safely after the crew performed this precautionary go-around to avoid hitting that small aircraft.
Everyone just kind of looked around and just, okay, this ain't normal, but nobody panicked. Nobody panicked at all.
Southwest 2504 going around.
2504, roger
that,
I maintain 3000.
Southwest 2504 up to 3000.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody was giving the go-ahead, but for some reason that business jet pulled onto the runway. Good news here is everybody remained calm on that plane and nobody was hurt. Today, victims of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing going to be remembered at a memorial mass in Lower Manhattan.
The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey holding the mass to commemorate the 32nd anniversary of the World Trade Center bombing.
An explosion underground in the garage section of the World Trade Center in New York City.
It was back on February 26, 1993, when 6 people and an unborn child were killed. A truck bomb detonated in a parking garage below the North Tower of the World Trade Center. More than 1,000 other people were hurt in the attack. The Mass will be held in the morning at St. Peter's Church on Barclay Street. It can be live streamed on the Port Authority's YouTube page. James Flippin for 77 WABC News.
Let's go down to Washington. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is going to come to the U.S., likely on Friday, after the U.S. and Ukraine signing off on the framework for a minerals deal that the president's been pushing for. President Trump talking about it in the Oval Office yesterday.
I hear that he's coming on Friday. Certainly it's okay with me if he'd like to, and he would like to sign it together with me, and I understand that's a big deal.
The president's been pushing for this rare earth minerals deal as a way for Ukraine to pay back the U.S. for the aid provided during the war with Russia, which is now 3 years long. While Trump called for $500 billion in rare earth minerals, Zelensky pushed back on the figure, saying the U.S. had provided Ukraine with $100 billion in aid.
It's a very big deal. Look, it could be $1 trillion deal, it could be whatever, but it's rare earths and other things.
But Trump says the most important part of this deal is U.S. taxpayers will get back the money that was given to Ukraine.
Shouldn't have had this problem because it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. So we have to straighten it out. But the American taxpayer now is going to get their money back plus.
Yeah, again, it looks like Zelensky will come to Washington. We'll get more particulars of this deal come Friday. The Vatican says Pope Francis remains in critical but stable condition this morning.
In an update from the Vatican, it was said that Francis hasn't had any acute respiratory episodes and underwent a scheduled CT scan. The pontiff has been in the hospital for over a week due to bronchitis and pneumonia. Officials added the prognosis remains uncertain for the 88-year-old. The Vatican said Francis has been resting well and has resumed work activities. I'm Mark Mayfield.
WABC News Time, 5:06, White House. Not saying yet what will happen once Elon Musk reaches the limit for days worked as a special government employee. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about that limit during a press conference yesterday.
So today is February 25th. So I think we've been here about 35 days, roughly. So ask me in another 100 days.
Okay. Musk can currently only work a maximum of 130 days. Musk has been overseeing, of course, the Department of Government Efficiency, better known as DOGE, since President Trump was sworn back into office last month. Meanwhile, 21 federal employees who had been working for the Department of Government Efficiency have resigned now in protest.
In the letter, the staffers who listed only their titles, which included engineers and data scientists, wrote that they refused to use their skills as technologists to compromise core government systems, jeopardize Americans' sensitive data, or dismantle critical public services. The employees had worked at the U.S. Digital Service, which the Trump administration then renamed the U.S. DOGE Service when coming into power. DOGE is seeking to overhaul the federal government by trying to make dramatic cuts to the public workforce and, in some cases, close entire agencies like the U.S. Agency for International Development. DOGE's tactics have been controversial, such as demanding federal employees list 5 things they accomplished last week or be forced to resign. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
WABC News Time 5:09. I'm going to add this to the traffic stories that Joe's doing there. This key bridge to the Hamptons has been abruptly and indefinitely closed by the state because of chipping away of one of its concrete supports. This is the Ponquag Bridge that connects Hampton Bays to Ponquag Beach. Now, if this was July, this would be a gigantic story, but it's still a big story here in February. So they found this yesterday, so they're shutting this down while they try to figure out what's wrong. So in the meantime, the bridge is going to be shut until they're able to fix that the structure itself and reopen it. And no timeline has been given to us, of course, of when that might happen because it was just found in the last 24 hours. Those information, of course, is passed on to us. We will pass that on to you. We were talking about Elon Musk. He's going to have a seat at at the Trump administration table. The White House confirming Musk will take part in President Trump's first cabinet meeting later today.
And Elon, considering he is working alongside the president and our cabinet secretaries, will be in attendance tomorrow just to talk about Doge's efforts.
He will be there to provide, yes, that Doge effort, and he'll also talk about what the cabinet secretaries have done to identify waste and government fraud.
He is, as a matter of fact. I spoke to the president about that before coming down here as well.
Yeah, so he will be at that table a little bit later today. 5:10, the head of the IRS announcing yesterday his abrupt retirement.
Acting IRS Commissioner Doug O'Donnell will step down from his role Friday after weeks of cutbacks since President Trump took office. O'Donnell's departure will come as the IRS heads into the final weeks of tax filing season. The Treasury Secretary has announced the IRS will be headed by Melanie Krause, who's been open to the Department of Government Efficiency's cuts. However, President Trump says he wants former Representative Billy Long to take control of the agency. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
WABC News Time 5:11. The Trump White House wants to shake up the White House press pool.
I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations.
White House spokesperson Caroline Levitt there says the administration will now welcome what she calls new voices as well as traditional legacy media outlets. She says part of the push is to expand access to the press briefing room. She says normally the White House Correspondents Association determines who's going to be in that press room and who's going to ask questions of the president or members of his cabinet. But she says now the White House will handle that thing.
The White House Correspondents Association has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore.
So she says this is not a huge change. She said it won't shake up the press room as some might be reporting today.
The White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join.
Yeah,
Fear not.
One of those legacy outlets would disagree with her, and that's the AP, the Associated Press, which has been banned from some events over this fact that they refuse to call the Gulf of Mexico now the Gulf of America, as it's now been renamed by the Trump White House. So that ban's still in place, held up yesterday by a U.S. District Judge in D.C. 5:12. As President Trump's tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada are expected to kick in as soon as next week, experts trying to figure out how it's going to impact the U.S. economy. One of them is the bank rate investment analyst Jim Royal, who says, generally speaking, most economists believe tariffs mean higher prices almost across the board once they're instituted.
That is, they're going to raise import prices of materials, whether that's finished goods, raw materials coming into the country, and that can have knock-on effects throughout the economy.
Okay, but the interesting part was yesterday when the president talked about the fact that he's going to put these tariffs down on March 4th next week. You would think that the markets would have been thrown by that, but the stock market seemed to be okay yesterday.
The net effect should be higher inflation. The markets don't seem to be all that nervous about what Trump's going to do. They really seem to be calling his bluff.
Yeah, so, well, in the past, of course, so far, in the first couple weeks of the presidency, the president has used the threat of tariffs to get some things back from Canada and Mexico. Maybe that's what he'll do again with these that are set to take place on March 4th. Meanwhile, the president yesterday announcing a new pathway to citizenship for wealthy investors. He announced the U.S. will sell what's called the gold card.
We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges plus. It's going to be a route to citizenship.
So Trump says this gold card will be similar to a green one, but will come with what he calls a higher level of sophistication.
They'll be wealthy, and they'll be successful, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people. And we think it's going to be extremely successful.
Yeah, Trump says wealthy people, he says, will be coming into our country buying this gold card. He says those who get the gold card will be spending a lot of money. So he says it'll be a good investment. He says those people will also pay a lot of taxes and potentially employ a lot of Americans. In a moment, we're going to hear from the president a little bit more as he surprised some tourists on a tour of the White House yesterday. We'll get into that in just a moment. First, 5:15, let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk. Happy Hump Day. Good morning, Justin Ellick.
Happy Hump Day. Good morning to you, Noam Layden. We will start here in Elmont with the NHL, where Johnny Brodzinski scored twice. Urho Vakanainen had a goal and 2 assists, and the Rangers beat the crosstown rival Islanders 5-1. JT Miller and Matt Rempe also scored for the Rangers, who won their second straight. Shesterkin finished with 36 saves. Alexander Romanov scored for the Islanders, who have lost 4 straight after winning 8 of 9. Elias Sorokin gave up 5 goals on 11 shots through 2 periods. Jacob Skarek came on to start the third period and stopped all 7 shots he faced. Rangers defensemen Adam Fox and Keandre Miller left the game and did not return. The Islanders fell to 8-11-1 against teams in the Metropolitan Division and 13-20-3 when allowing the first goal. Coming up next for both squads, the Rangers host Toronto on Friday to open a 4-game homestand, and the Islanders will visit Boston tomorrow night. On the NBA hardwood, no local action was had last night, but the Knicks and Nets will both be back out there tonight at the Garden. The Knicks are getting set to welcome in the Philadelphia 76ers for a 7 p.m. tip-off before the Nets get underway at home against the OKC Thunder at 7:30. The Knicks are 9-3 against division opponents and are 6-4 in their last 10 games. Karl Anthony Towns is day-to-day with a lower body injury, and Mitchell Robinson is still out with that ankle injury. As for the Nets, they're 7-3 in their last 10 heading into tonight's action. Cam Thomas is day-to-day with a hamstring, along with D'Angelo Russell and his nagging ankle. Noah Clowney will remain out with an ankle injury as well. That is your Sports Gnome, and I'm Justin Ellick on 77 WABC.
WABC News Time 5:18. The president heard there was a tour group going through the White House yesterday, one of these self-guided tours. They had called off these self-guided tours for a while as the president moved in, and they started them up again just in the last week or so. So the president heard one of these tour groups was going through the White House, and he said, oh, you know what, well, let me go meet these people, make their day, which he absolutely did. Here's what it sounded like.
But I want to thank you very much for coming. The tour is so great. We did such a good job. First Lady worked very hard on making it perfect, and I think you're going to really love it. And I heard you were here, and I said, let's stop by and say hello. And it's a group of very smart-looking people, I must say. Very smart. Maybe someday you'll be here as the president, right? Somebody in this group has a chance. Have a good time. Have a great tour. And you're going to give them a special tour, okay? You're going to get a special tour. Have fun, everybody.
No doubt a moment those people will never forget. You know, the tours are free, and all you have to do is set it up through your local congressional representative. Send them an email, and it's kind of cool, though. They give you, you don't get full access, of course, but they did yesterday. They got the president, but you get like the China room, the blue room, the red room, the green room, the state dining room, and a peek at the White House Kennedy Garden on that tour, which is a lot of fun. 5:20. Federal employees being given now another chance to answer an email asking what they've accomplished in the previous week. The Office of Personnel Management telling agency heads to decide how to respond to a request for federal workers to list out their tasks in bullet point form. Some people say they do understand why there's outrage about this.
I would feel very nervous at work because it depends on what you consider to be a task.
I get it done all the time, and I have that conversation every year or two.
I think it's completely ridiculous. I don't understand how somebody from outside the job can have any influence over whether or not you keep your job.
Now, there's been a couple threats with these emails that if people didn't return them, they could be let go from their jobs. But so far, that has not taken place. Trump, the president, called the idea genius of these weekly emails. Not clear if there is a new deadline or if the deadline will be followed up with those actual terminations or dismissals from government jobs. But if they do, Governor Kathy Hochul says New York State will take some of those federal workers. She had a press event yesterday where she says she's launched this initiative to respond to DOGE and the plan to trim its workforce. She says New York could use some of those workers.
The federal government might say you're fired, but here in New York, we say you're hired. In fact, we love federal workers. Whatever your skills, we value public service.
And in fact, this morning, if you go to the New York State website, they've posted some of those potential jobs online. 5:21, will key evidence be allowed in the Gilgo Beach serial trial? A hearing We'll determine that next month now.
New York City architect Rex Heuermann of Massapequa Park was in court for the pretrial hearing that set the March 12th date. That's when prosecutors and defense attorneys will argue over what DNA evidence will be allowed. Defense attorney Michael Brown questions the technique that helped collect the material called nuclear DNA.
This is novel information. They call it science. We're disputing that.
Saying the method has never been used in New York court. Suffolk County DA Ray Tierney says it's been around for many years.
The defense wants to call it magic, that's fine. The defense could call it whatever it likes.
James Flippin for 77 WABC News.
WABC News Time 522. Supreme Court ordering a new trial now for an Oklahoma death row inmate. His name is Richard Glossop. Glossop's attorney says the ruling is a victory for justice and fairness in the judicial system. Now, Glossop has had 3 final meals where he was set to be executed, but those executions were called off. So here he goes again. He gets another one.
We've been fighting this case for 10 years now, and, to have, the court vindicate us and all of our efforts, keep Rich from being wrongly executed. It's been amazing.
So the new trial ordered after it was found prosecutors knowingly allowed false testimony during his 2004 retrial for the murder-for-hire killing of an Oklahoma City motel owner. So he's still going to be behind bars.
District attorneys do not have the duty to win. They have the duty to do justice. And that means that they have to play fair. If they know that their witnesses that they're calling are not telling the truth, they have an obligation to say they're not telling the truth and to stop the proceeding.
Now, Glossop had 9 execution dates since he was first convicted and 3 last meals. Don't know if Oklahoma still lets inmates choose their final meal, because we're always fascinated about what they want to eat during their final meal. Some states have eliminated that and said you get whatever on the prison menu. 5:23 with just days to go before the end of Phase 1 of the Gaza ceasefire deal. Israel delaying the return hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Correspondent Matt Bradley reports from Tel Aviv that Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu is outraged over how the transfer of Israeli hostages have been handled so far. If you've seen them, of course, they've been done in front of these large crowds with the stage where they parade the hostages on stage.
He says he's going to be withholding those prisoners until Hamas and its partners in the Gaza Strip stop what he's called essentially degrading or humiliating theatrics involved in the processing and the handover of these hostages.
Yeah, the Prime Minister says enough of those. I'm not going to watch these hostages be paraded for these ceremonies.
They're put in sound stages, some of them emblazoned with anti-Israel slogans. This has really angered Israeli society, and Benjamin Netanyahu and his allies have said they're going to stop complying with the terms of that peace treaty that was signed in late January until those ceremonies stop.
Of course, this all comes at a critical time because it's the end of Phase 1 and beginning of Phase 2, so no one's clear what's going to happen next.
We're now at the very end of Phase 1, the first 6 weeks of that treaty. There have been no negotiations so far to move to Phase 2, and that would presumably see some sort of permanent peace, more permanent peace in the Gaza Strip, and potentially the full withdrawal of the Israeli military.
Meanwhile, there is a report that Hamas is considering handing over the bodies of Israeli hostages who have died to Egypt, which would apparently prevent those ceremonies from taking place. 5:25, a handful of congressional Republicans say it's time for the U.S. to get out of the United Nations. Chip Roy, the congressman from Texas, one of them, he says this is keeping in line with President Trump's America's First agenda.
We're not getting our money's worth. And in fact, it's the opposite. We're funding hostility to our existence.
Roy says the UN has enjoyed American tax dollars while undermining our interests, attacking allies, bolstering adversaries.
It becomes the mouthpiece for the radical left to produce a globalist agenda that undermines our national security and undermines our freedom. There's a growing understanding and interest among my colleagues in the absurdity that is the United Nations and why we should not fund it any longer.
Meanwhile, the latest data that we have about how much we give the UN, this comes from 2022, so it's already 3 years ago, but it's the latest figures out there. $18 billion allocated to the UN in 2022. 5:26, the Texas Health and Human Services Commission is set to give an update again today on that massive measles outbreak that has moved into urban areas of Texas now. Now, as of yesterday, 124 reported cases. This was almost exclusively among unvaccinated children. The measles, of course, is incredibly contagious, and those are just the reported cases. So the thought is the number's a whole lot higher. Dr. Peter Hotez, he is with the Baylor Infectious Disease Unit, and he's an expert there, and he says there's going to be another big jump in cases.
If a single person's infected with measles, on average, they'll infect 12 to 18 unvaccinated individuals.
Yeah, so he says now's the time not to mess around if you're a parent, to get your kid vaccinated, because if you get the shot, it'll be effective within 72 hours, and that could give some people some relief.
Because it's so highly transmissible, because it lingers in the atmosphere, there could be hundreds of cases that are still in the process of being diagnosed or remain undiagnosed.
Yeah, so he expects that number, 124 yesterday, will go a whole lot higher today.
Lincoln Center and 77 WABC. Both are real New York. WABC. It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam
on 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me. Good morning. It is Wednesday, February 26. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Sunshine this morning, some clouds this afternoon, another beauty of a day on the way. High 53. Tonight and overnight, though, we'll see some rain, low 43. And we'll start Thursday with showers in the morning and then a cloudy afternoon. Still going to be really warm for February, though, high 54. If you are walking out the door with us right now, it is 39 and clear in Dobbs Ferry. That's up in Westchester County. It is 33 and clear in Lawrenceville in Mercer County over in New Jersey. And it's 42 and clear right outside our Midtown studio. I told you about that horrific boat turned over right near Staten Island over the weekend. 3 people were killed. 2 survived, 2 in critical condition, 2 other survivors. One of those survivors is a 60-year-old Shusen Mararam. And he was pulled from that boat that capsized Staten Island over the weekend. The rescue crew still unsure why the boat overturned. But he was talking, of course, to his family a lot about what took place. His daughter spoke to Eyewitness News yesterday about how her father's doing in the aftermath of all this.
He says it's all happened so fast. He said he did take his clothes off. He took his boots off because it started weighing him down and, survival kicked in.
And the water, of course, incredibly cold. Hypothermia started to set in right away. And he's going to feel guilt, he says, for a long time that he wasn't able to help anybody else nearby.
He's like, I couldn't help them. Because hypothermia set in. He's like, I couldn't feel my fingers. I couldn't feel my toes. He was just freezing.
And now, of course, the married father of 2, as many people are in similar cases like this, overwhelmed with survivor guilt that he survived and the others did not.
My dad's okay, but I'm traumatized that the rest of the families are feeling something different than I am.
Yeah, Coast Guard New York Harbor Patrol still unsure why that boat overturned. 5:40, the race to become next mayor. We'll get a sneak preview of it later today, where a number of the Democratic candidates who want to be the Big Apple's next mayor will face off against each other. One of the people who will not be there will be former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who has not officially jumped into the race, so we expect he will do any moment. City Comptroller Brad Lander, who is in the race, could not hold back yesterday when he was asked about a prospect of a Cuomo comeback campaign right here in New York.
I don't believe that New Yorkers want to trade one corrupt chaos agent for another.
So Lander is running for mayor in a Democratic field that includes a bunch of progressives. One of them, State Senator Zellner Myrie, Jessica Ramos. There's the Socialist Assemblyman Zoran Mamdani and former Comptroller Scott Stringer. Eric Adams, of course, I guess he's the centrist, and he doubled down on the fact that he's in the race. In fact, he says petitions are out there, and he's asking New Yorkers to sign them.
I'm running. Petitions will be in the street, so please, if you see one with my name on it, please sign it.
Hank Scheinkoff, of course, the longtime political analyst, political watchers, watched a ton of races nationally, of course, a ton of races here in New York City. He was weighing in on Governor Cuomo jumping in. He thinks Governor Cuomo has a good shot.
He's going to run a campaign that is less exposes him to these kinds of allegations and more about performance on particular issues that people care about.
So here's the question, of course, is will those sexual harassment accusations that forced him out of office in Albany follow him? Will the COVID cases where he sent people back into nursing homes, will that follow him? Well, Hank Scheinkoff says this is a different race and people might not look at those things when they're trying to decide on a candidate.
People are not interested in ethics right now. They're interested in a cleaner city, a safer city, and a more hospitable city.
And it is interesting to ask New Yorkers in Midtown what they think. Just everyday New Yorkers. What do you think? Would you vote for Andrew Cuomo after what you know about him as governor? And there's a fair amount of people who say, yeah, they would.
I think maybe he'd bring something to the Democrats that is missing at the moment.
It wouldn't make a difference because, like I said, the rest of them that's in there, they're not doing anything positive anyway.
I think he has our best interest, you know. We need someone like him in here that's a strong Democrat.
Yeah, so a lot of positive votes there. There is a debate a little bit later today. Again, it will not include Andrew Cuomo, but it will include Mayor Adams. 5:43, a Bronx mom. Just a lot of heartache for her. Her son killed, 14 years old. He was riding on a mini bike up in the Bronx when something happened. It's not clear. A minivan either slammed into the dirt bike or the dirt bike slammed into the minivan. This kid, just 14 years old. No one's really 100% clear what took place. Police are investigating. The minivan stayed at the scene. And this is an area where apparently there's been a lot of traffic accidents over the year, and they had just put up a traffic light at this intersection where this all took place. But people in the neighborhood said nobody pays attention to that traffic light.
Although the traffic light is new, a lot of people run it in the weekends, late evenings. There's like a Fast and Furious type of environment here.
Yeah, so far, no charges have been filed as investigators will work to determine who ran the light there. Out on Long Island, 2 9/11 first responders who have fallen ill are going to make the trip to Washington, D.C. today to urge lawmakers to support a bill that addresses what would be a funding shortfall in the World Trade Center health program, which is this thing that always outrages me, that they would short this health program so these workers wouldn't get the health benefits that they're due for all the work they did after the 9/11 attacks. But here we are again. And here is one of those former 9/11 first responders who has fallen ill.
Out of 435 congressional districts, 434 of those congressional districts have a 9/11 responder who was in the World Trade Center health program living in their district. So we have to educate them. And sometimes we have to call them out on their hypocrisy also.
Yeah, you got to smack them around. The program, which pays for medical treatment for more than 137,000 people with 9/11-related illnesses, is in danger, again, of running out of money. That's why these two, among others, will be in D.C. today.
I deal with the long-term effects of head and neck cancer radiation.
There are plenty of people who need what we're fighting for. I always thought it would be easier as you get further away from it. I don't know why. It just never did.
Yeah, so why don't they, of course, approve this through the lifetimes of these individuals? Now, this is the new bill we're being told. It's on the table. It would fund the World Trade Center health program through 2090. That makes a whole lot of sense. All right, 5:45. Let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk. Here's Justin Ella.
Thank you, Noah Maladen. We'll start here in Elmont with the NHL. Johnny Brodzinski scored twice. Urho Vakanainen had a goal and 2 assists, and the Rangers beat the crosstown rival Islanders 5-1. JT Miller and Matt Rempe also scored for the Rangers, who won their second straight. Igor Shesterkin finished with 36 saves. Alexander Romanov scored for the Islanders, who have lost 4 straight after winning 8 of 9. Ilya Sorokin gave up 5 goals on 11 shots through 2 periods. Jacob Skarek came on to start the third period and stopped all 7 shots that he faced. Rangers defensemen Adam Fox and Keandre Miller left the game and did not return. The Islanders fell to 8-11-1 against teams in the Metropolitan Division and 13-20-3 when allowing the first goal. Coming up next for both squads, The Rangers host Toronto on Friday to open a 4-game homestand, and the Islanders will visit Boston tomorrow night. On the NBA hardwood, no local action was had last night, but the Knicks and Nets will both be back out there tonight. At the Garden, the Knicks are getting set to welcome in the Philadelphia 76ers for a 7 p.m. tip-off before the Nets get underway against the OKC Thunder at 7:30. The Knicks are 9-3 against division opponents and are 6-4 in their last 10 games. Karl-Anthony Towns is day-to-day with a lower body injury, and Mitchell Robinson is still out with that ankle injury. As for the Nets, they're 7-3 in their last 10 heading into tonight's action. Cam Thomas is day-to-day with a hamstring, along with D'Angelo Russell and his nagging ankle. Noah Clowney will remain out with his ankle injury as well.
Don't you want things to sort of fast forward a week or two? It's like this is the slowest sports period of the year, one of them.
No, I mean, I feel useless up here. My
well, no,
God.
you're doing a great job, but we just want like March Madness to begin so we have something to talk about.
I know there's really nothing going on right now. You know, baseball's still kind of easing into spring training action. Some excitement over the weekend. You had Juan Soto homer in his first at bat with the Mets in spring training, and
but that's spring training.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to sit here and report on spring training scores, especially at this point in spring training. There are several teams that are having exhibition. Two teams basically play at once.
Right.
They'll have like an A team and a B team play 2 exhibition games at once. So you're not even getting really A level guys in a lot of these games because they already played a half an hour earlier. So it's a little bit weird the way early spring training schedule works. But
so when do all these tourneys begin, like the Big East and all that stuff? Is that still like 2 or 3 weeks away?
Yeah, indeed. And then right up until March Madness begins in
end of March.
Yeah, end of March there. So I'll get an exact date on definitely the Big East start of that tournament for you. Obviously, St. Johnny's in first place, and barring any miraculous. Events in that tournament. Hopefully, they come out with that title.
Well, I think they get a bid even if they don't win that tournament.
Yeah,
huh?
Mm-hmm. Sure thing, for sure. So we will see, Noam. But indeed, I'm with you. Let's fast forward a couple weeks here in the world of sports. Back to you.
Very boring.
Exactly.
Yes, it really is.
Thank you, Mr. President.
WABC News Time 5:50. Let's go out to Brooklyn, where there are going to be layoffs at the Brooklyn Museum. A lot of protests there yesterday. The museum facing a $10 million deficit. They're citing inflation, a slow post-pandemic bounce back at the museum as some of the reasons. They're going to cut 10% of their workforce. Now, they had this great Jay-Z exhibit for a while, but apparently the numbers are not as good as when that Jay-Z exhibit was there. Protesters say it's a mismanagement of funds at the museum and that they should have enough money to pay all their employees. They also say the museum president makes a salary that's north of $1 million. They say that's too much.
Mismanagement of funds. Totally. We're all going through inflation right now. But the way they spend money here on the backs of their employees is disgraceful.
Not really 100% clear yet who will get those pink notices.
Today, they want to balance that deficit on the back of our employees. No, we say no.
It's an injustice. It's not the Brooklyn way.
Yeah, so what we're being told, 47 layoffs are scheduled for March 10th. So that's a fair amount, 10% of their workforce at the museum. 5:51 in New Jersey, Governor Murphy proposing a $58 billion budget for the 2026 fiscal year. It's the largest budget in New Jersey history. It contains a $1.2 billion budget gap, but Murphy says
we can lead our state responsibly and pragmatically while never letting go of our willingness to dream.
In terms of taxes, the governor says he expects them to go up on sports betting, internet gaming, alcohol, and tobacco.
We're going to continue delivering economic security and opportunity to every family in every corner of the Garden State.
More money is going to go to education.
We will once again fully fund New Jersey's public education system.
Yeah, so the second-term Democrat, of course, who was term limited, says this all comes what he calls the chaos of D.C., and he says he thinks that's going to have an impact on the state, especially in light of a federal funding freeze. Governor Hochul here in New York urging striking prison guards upstate to get back to work as the state starts to file legal action against them now.
There's an enormous strain on our system right now. I encourage everyone to come back to work. We hear you with respect to the long hours. I'm working hard to address that.
Yeah, it is amazing. Today is the 10th day of that strike, which was not even authorized by their union. It's prompted the governor to have to send thousands of National Guard members into dozens of prisons to make sure everybody's safe.
Let me be clear. the illegal actions being taken by a number of individuals is putting the entire state at risk. We need them back to work. This must end immediately.
And Hochul says she's ready to address the issue, some of them being long hours, but she says she needs to do that with these guards back on the job.
These are hard jobs. Not everybody's signing up for them. We're doing the very best we can.
Yeah, prison guards walked out complaining about dangerous working conditions, staffing shortages, and a lot of forced overtime. And while we're talking about the governor, do you remember this was when she was talking about getting rid of Mayor Adams? She was consulting with everybody across the city, and then she said she wasn't going to boot Mayor Adams from the gig, but she was going to lay down these guardrails that would be like a series of oversights that the city council would have over the mayor. So the question we have is, what are they, and have they been done? She was asked about this yesterday. It seems like nothing has happened in the city council or state legislature regarding what she calls these guardrail proposals connected to Adams' federal corruption case. Here's how she responded to that yesterday.
I'll continue working with the city council to find out what concerns they have. I'd be shocked to think that people don't agree that there should be some measures.
Yeah, so basically what she said is nothing has been done so far. It was a day in court for accused Gilgo Beach killer Rex Heuermann out on Long Island. At a pre-trial hearing, a judge set a date of March 12th for both sides to argue what DNA evidence should be used, including the results obtained using a technique called nuclear DNA. Now, the defense is saying that nuclear DNA should not be used at all.
This is novel information. They call it science. We're disputing that.
That's defense attorney Michael Brown, who questions the results taken from hair samples taken from 6 of the murder victims, pointing out that that method of DNA, nuclear DNA, has never been used in a New York courtroom before.
And it's prevented people from dying from disease. It's detected diseases. It's used in amniocentesis. It's identified war dead. It's identified remains of 9/11 people.
But DA Ray Tierney says that's nonsense. He says he looks forward to defending the nuclear DNA technique and hopes it'll be used in the prosecution of Rex Heuermann.
This science has been around for many, many years. And if the defense wants to call it magic, that's fine. The defense could call it whatever it likes.
Yes, it'll be back in court in March again. Let's end with this story. 2 NYPD cops being held as hero after rescuing a man who fell through the ice in Brooklyn's Prospect Park on Sunday. NYPD officers Christian Ferrante and his partner, Luili Baez, had just seconds to react after a man somehow stranded himself in the middle of the lake. This was Sunday night. So it was dark outside. The people nearby heard this guy's calls for help, and these 2 officers, Ferrante and Baez, raced in.
As soon as we got out of the car, that was when the ice cracked beneath him, and he fell in.
So now he's screaming, now we got to get him out of the ice.
We, went over the radio. We requested all the units.
Central, be advised. The aided fell into the ice.
You can hear the guys screaming in the background there. So they could not wait for the other officers to arrive. They had to do it on their own. And next to ponds across the city, there are these rescue ladders to just that type of thing when someone falls through the ice. So these 2 officers put that ladder out, and they helped this individual get out of the water.
Out of my stomach, extended the ladder out. My partner had my leg. And we pulled in at the same time, and we were able to get him off the ice.
I can't feel anything. Come on.
And into the ambulance.
He was in the water for about 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, so that guy, okay, he owes his life, no doubt, to these 2 officers who risked their own lives. And, of course, as officers always do in these situations, they say it's just part of their gig.
You take this job to put other people before you.
We were doing what we were trained to do.
They were having a rough time, and I was there for them.
This was an amazing day. Could have gone worse, but this is an amazing day.
Yeah, amazing job done by Officer Ferrante and Officer Baez.